Howdy, folks. Today let's talk about the Moondrop Joker. Thanks, Apos Audio, for sending me these. Haven't heard any Moondrop big headphones ever. So, talk about the specifications on these guys right here. Also, I'll just kind of move them around a little bit. Hear the clankiness. Very likely plastic headband here. Pleather with, fabric. Can't see the drivers in there. We got a metal headband and some screws and lots of plastics around here. So I don't know if they'll last. They don't bother me entirely, but they're also kind of chintzy. I guess for $80, that's about what you'd expect. So 50 millimeter dynamic driver headphones developed by Moondrop, apparently. The driver is. Do we get them? So they are 106 decibels per VRMS milliwatt, maybe. I'm not sure how that equates out, but and an impedance of 68 ohms. So they take a bit of power to get cranked up there. I'm actually using my bigger stuff to try them out. They did less good with like my phone, my LG phone, stuff like that. Fit and finish, just talked about that real quick. Here, I'll just flip over to here. So, fit and finish. Here, let me do this. Plastic with the metal band, probably about what you'd expect at this price point. It's $80. Anything else that matters? Here's a little breakdown of their driver stuff. They feel fairly dampened as far as like you can't see the driver in here. That's like a pretty thick amount of fabric in there, and there's like these little holes here for, I guess that's maybe, I don't know if it's venting so much as maybe just releasing heat, possibly a little bit of airflow in them, maybe. But in any case, I don't think it affects the tonality very much. But closed back, pleather, fabric, standard stuff. Let's go on to the sound. So this is actually interesting that Moondrop managed to pull off like a Moondrop, like IEM house sound out of a big closed headphone. Interesting. I didn't expect that to happen necessarily. They have an insane amount of mids. In fact, so much that they have a very cocked, shouty feeling. It's interesting because it doesn't necessarily hit me in decibels, but the actual tuning has a really shouty tuning going on there. So in other words, you can turn them up fairly loud, and it's not like suddenly that the mids are just like whacking you too necessarily, but they immediately sound very shouty. So interesting. Probably like dampened that part of the tuning quite a bit. They have a lot of mids, a lot of high mids, and a fair amount of treble, which is kind of like Moondrop's sort of like house sound kind of thing, I suppose. Not a lot of low mids, and the bass shelf is focused in the sub range, but there's still not a lot of subs, so like it's entirely Moondrop-y. They always have like just enough bass, but not just enough to make them like passable, but not enough to make them amazing, that kind of thing. However, so the only reason really I'm talking about these is because they actually have one metric which is really quite good for $80. The stage on these is really, really wide and open feeling. For being a closed back, I thought that was quite interesting. You could, I don't know, if someone didn't tell you and they put these on your head, you might say, well, that sounds kind of open backy. So, something like that. Quite a lot of treble. It's detailed. Not really sibilant necessarily, but there's a lot of treble and high mids. That's kind of like the focus of this set right here. So, stuff like female vocals comes across really fairly nicely, although if you have anyone that has a deeper register going on, they're going to sound really rather nasally. That's the shout factor coming in here. And so, out of everything here, the stage is actually the really nice part of this. That's why I'm talking about it. I can listen to certain stuff with these with the volume down and just chill, man. It sounds really nice, wide open feeling, good imaging, fairly precise, but not super precise, sort of natural good imaging, we'll call it. So that part of that, listening to some podcasts and things like that, I felt like it came across more natural than some of the other headphones I've tried, the Mi's. Maze, for instance. These has a more natural imaging, more natural stage, although the rest of it is I could do without the tuning. So we'll just move on to like some playback here. Music, I just talked about podcasts for a minute. Vocals sound honky, and for the most part, I don't particularly like it, but it's extremely clear. And so if you're just wanting to listen to actual people talk, then they work pretty good. And I would imagine if you're older and you have hearing loss, they're going to do actually a lot better for you, just because of that honky nature in the mid range. That should be a part of the mid range that older folks can hear well. All right, let's go on to some music stuff. Blues, absolutely no. The honky quality just ruins everything. If there's any kind of vocals, Robert Cray was just absolutely horrible. There's just no meat on the bones there. No. Classical was actually, yes, not too bad. That's probably one of the better things these do. You don't need a ton of mid bass, although I would have preferred some. Give it a little more, meat on the bones as I call it, but a little more physicality to the sound rather than so much high mids and high textures, high mid, treble-y textures. So classical was pretty good. And let's go on to disco. Disco was absolutely horrible. It has so much mids, it just about blew my brains out immediately. And so the music has mids, these have honky mids, and you end up with just wow, man. And also, disco needs some mid bass, and these don't have much. They have subs, and disco doesn't have subs. So yeah, bad combination there. Electronica was a no. It's just I could not get chop my dick off. I could not get any kind of appropriate tonality where you could turn these up and like start, jamming out to the bass, the wobbles. None of that was happening at all. There was enough sub bass to hear it, and that's about it. And then the mids were just like whack. So this is how this is going to go a little bit. Jazz was actually okay. Jazz can be a little bit thick on a lot of recordings, which gives you kind of a sultry nature. I don't necessarily like that on a lot of tracks. I feel like they go over the top of the with that set style of mixing. But these did fairly good. Jazz, also there was no vocals, so you didn't really hear that honky kind of quality in the mid range. So pretty good. Metal, absolutely not. Just based on everything else, no surprise there. Absolutely no meat on the bones for guitars. They sound sizzly and just horrible. R&B was a no. Not enough bass. Not enough to just make them fun, let's say. Also, if there's any females singing honkiness going on there, you immediately just feel it kind of like takes you out of the music because you're just like, I don't know about those mids. Reggae actually sounded reasonably good from a lot of tracks, which was interesting. I don't really know. I don't really want to flesh it out that much, but I found it pretty okay. For whatever reason, reggae was a pass on this. I like it. Rock and roll was an absolute no. There's just not enough low mids on this to pull that off at all. So it's all high biased. No. Soundtracks, no epic feeling, although the staging made up for some of that on some stuff. That super wideness, super openness gives you a little bit of an epic feeling, but then there's no bass, there's no low mids, there's no high bass. It's just not there. So it's like, almost there, not quite. Vaporwave actually came across pretty good since those tracks are mixed with so wacky. They could have like more bass than they should or whatever, but the stage saved that, saved this pair on those for me. Actually, pretty damn good. Vaporwave was. Interesting. There's a little bit of X factor going on there with the stage, so I like that. And Vintage and Lounge actually came across pretty decently, like Buena Vista Social Club. Those mixes tend to be fairly thick, and this doesn't have that factor going on, but it still sounded quite nice and wide and open. And so the conclusion, Moondrop is fixated on graphs. That's just the truth, man. If they had just listened to this more than looking at their graph stuff, trying to hit their targets, then they might have felt like, okay, maybe we shouldn't put 10 decibels of, or I don't know how much these have. It seems like more than 10 of mids around, I don't know, maybe 2.5. I would say probably for Moondrop about 2.75, something like that. But this feels like they have like 15 dB of pinna in that area. I didn't pull up a graph. Well, let's see. Let's look up a graph for laughs. Is that oh, that's a fail is what that is. Let me see. Do I have any Joker graphs? Jokers? No. All right, never mind. Doesn't matter, 15, something like that. So yeah, they were pretty close to actually pulling off a tuning that was enjoyable on this, but they tripped at the finish line. The build quality could probably be a little bit better. I think they could have pulled it off, just a little bit less clank and jank to it. And although the stuff I enjoyed was pretty good, I could kick back and actually enjoy it. By the way, just to mention this, your standard sort of single-ended 3.5mm jacks for this. You could fit any kind of cables. Oh, also just to mention this, here I'll flip over real quick. Cable is nice. It's flexible, it's supple, it's not tangly, and it's not heavy, and I like it. This is probably one of the better ones I've seen for a big headphone, so cool. Just to mention that. But I cannot recommend these. The honky quality of these should have been fixed in tuning, and I don't know what Moondrop's thinking, to be honest with you. And yeah, my executive decision maker said, never. All right, talk to you on the next one.